Welcome to TradeTheNBA.com. This is John's report is for the 14th of September, and we saw the market open up rather high and then traded off pretty dramatically. The NASDAQ a little bit more in line with what we were seeing already from the S&P, which was already weaker. And the fact that we're getting a little bit of a decline in the white means that we could see a little bit more of an upspurt, but needless to say, you can tell from that setup, pretty weak. I'll actually add the D-red into this going forward, which is the gray line, because when blue moves back above it, usually we get our strong return. So was that the extent of it, dipping below the 76%? We're going to see. Potential is that there's still weakness. We haven't seen these kind of weak readings. This was an end of the day buy that sort of lifted everything up. You can see from the 76% is at 44.63. That becomes the pivot point. Pretty straightforward. And of course, intraday we can see what that looks like. Actually, I have to put up the 50K right here, and you can see where that is at from the turnaround. Bought the little setup there. What we'll be looking for is see if that white MBI pierces past the magenta like it did earlier in the day before, and that led to the breakdown to the lows, so that expectation was met there. And each time it's popped forward, we've been seeing that pushback to the 0%. Doesn't always happen immediately. This was a lower pivot that took place. That's why we ended up with the spike, but when the secondary move came through, it was a clear indication that we were headed back to that 0 point. There it is from the NQ. You can see crossover took place. Actually, it's happening today comparative to the other markets. So if we see continued weakness in the NASDAQ, that will be really a precursor to more selling from the S&P. If not, if it's able to hold that, then should be able to be another one of these very short, tiny buy the dip configurations. From a Euro standpoint, again, also looking problematic, holding it up, though I would think the Fed will do what it can to step in there from that. Bitcoin, off of its selling, came through, ended up with the buy setup, where was that at? Right around 45. And so all the way up at 46.01, so excellent signaling buy configuration there in the middle of a big optimization on that 5K new opus. But we can go ahead and look at what we saw intraday, and it was fairly good action. I mean, we ended up with that big rise early in the morning, series of positive extremes right below where the MBI was, and sure enough, it filled that first thing. Then it made an attempted pop, but ooh, look at that big spike of the weight right there, and that led to lows. And the MBI Opus intraday chart clearly caught that short going all the way through. The difference was that when we ended up with the magenta spike up there, we started with a rebuild here on that pivot back up, and that took us back, still unable to break that 50% mode. And once the sell configuration came through, boom, back down to the 0. And again, we got another spike. This one took a while to develop, so we ended up with a lot of just little muck, but the expectation was still that we would get a 0 when the secondary one came through. I stayed with that all the way through short, and that's the adjustments that you're seeing on that optimization, where I'm taking into account both from the buy standpoint, not meeting the stop loss, as well as then when this yellow spikes is what I'm working on with the show me first that will indicate where each of them are and the best configurations. I can put that one into the code because it's very effective, because right here you ended up with the white spike right there at 31.58 over the magenta at 27, and sure enough that led to lows, new lows. We ended up with another brief one, made it to lows really fast, and then we ended up with our turnaround from a buy standpoint. NBI shows up, and that's what rode the buyback at the end of the day that really salvaged the market, because without that it was really in trouble. And even at what the general close was, it still continued after hours from that. And we put in some positive extremes from that setup starting right about here. And that's what filled pretty darn quick. And we've seen a pop up, but nice big weight peak over that. You've got MBI, DOC cyan below green, so that's going to negate that one for a while. So I would expect that's going to pop back up again. And we'll see if then we can get additional white spike from there to really drive it lower. So that's the long and the short of it. Again, I promised that as soon as people were done with that summer vacation, we'd get some activities both ways. And that was a much more dramatic swing than we've seen quite some time. So good stuff, and program's following it beautifully. So all exciting. As always, though, I will continue to post updates, and as soon as I have the additional update on that MBI Opus as well as the Opus 2T, I'll send out the most recent update that really captures some of the little changes that really are improving, getting it closer and closer to matching where the paint bar is with some of the subtle adjustments that you would just take into account for actual trading purposes. Trade well. We'll talk again later.